One thing I wanted to mention in these videos is that I deal with a lot of stuff out of the kindness of my heart. I've been doing so for 25 years now. Some of it wasn't a choice until I was about 16, 17. At that time, I was already getting abused by old people. I was already helping out souls. I already was protecting my nephew from my own mother. I was already in programs helping other kids. I've already had, by the time I was 16, I must have had at least 20 adults thank me for helping them. I mean, I used to help teachers, I used to help the staff members, other girlfriends, parents like me for that same reason. Adults seem to like me other than my mother and father because when they do something wrong, they don't want to take responsibility for it. They just want me to pay the price. And I don't like that. So that's a different relationship. But when it comes to like my girlfriend's parents, they see me as somebody who's responsible. I'm talking about, oh no, we have to do it this way because that's the responsible and we got to do it. No, that's not logical. And oh no, there's a better way to do that. And so the way I do things and the way I thank you, and I'm always going the extra mile. And even though I'm injured, once when I explain and give the truth, they understand. But see, my family, they want to blame, tear apart. They want proof on everything too. Like if my father does something to me and I tell him he did it, like for instance, he took my Social Security, and that's why I don't know how to reapply for my Social Security. When it comes time to apply for Social Security or reapply, I miss classes that I needed because my father decided to lie. I was in a program in Lawrence. It was called Highfields in Lawrence. I was there for over a year. Every week there was a class, either one class for people who work or one class for people with parents that had collected Social Security. So, for instance, there was AP. She had foster parents. They collected Social Security in her name. It was about 800 and something dollars every month. When she turned 19 years old, they had to pass it over to her. Then she had to reapply. So she was downstairs taking classes, learning how to reapply for Social Security, learning how to hire a Social Security attorney. They had staff members to help you. They would give you lists of attorneys you could call. They would tell you how to complete a call. They would show you how to fill out the paperwork. They would show you what phone numbers and where to go to get paperwork, stuff like that. But I wasn't allowed in those classes because those classes are for people on Social Security. My father lied and said that I wasn't on Social Security. So instead, they were showing me how to fill out for food stamps and lie to the Food Stamp Administration because my father lied on all the paperwork, committing quite actually a big crime. My father doesn't even realize what he did, what makes it even more funny. I should have just let them do their thing and then my father would have learned. But instead, I bailed him out. I refused to sign. And because my father stole from me, and they wanted me to sign as a witness and I refused, they didn't have me as a witness. They had no case against my father. So I bailed my father out of this trouble once when there was charges pressed and he had to go to court. Because what he did was illegal. Not only did he misappropriate funds, he also lied on legal paperwork. So he committed fraud as well by signing the papers to sign me into a program and by lying to me over the age of 18, causing me to file paperwork with food stamps. That was also fraud. And also filing with this program when they had the original paperwork means they're teaching me the wrong classes that I'm supposed to be in. So I'm missing out on very important classes. And now I'm 19 and it's time for me to reapply. And my father's like, well, I got my money out of it, so who cares anymore? I fucking got my money. I even stole some. Yeah, I'm all set. Fuck Zach. I don't care anymore. Then his wife dies and he's like, even more. Fuck Zach. I'm going to steal the inheritance. So that's my father's delusion. He thinks that anything that's meant for me is automatically his because he pays taxes. Something like that. Like, for instance, my Social Security that was meant for like, for instance, my clothing check was in there. The $200 in clothing checks that every other orphan like me got, every other person who was in foster care there. So a lot of them, their parents were just drug addicts or whatever, and they went into orphanages. But all these people are on Social Security, or they get clothing checks and they live in a program or something like that. So where was my clothing check? That gets included into Social Security if you're collecting it. If you collect Social Security, you don't get food stamps like the other people who get food stamps. You don't get a clothing check like the other kids that get clothing checks. Instead, you get a Social Security check. It's all included. The reason why you can't collect food stamps while collecting Social Security, like when my father was collecting $980 in Social Security behind my back while I was missing out on all my classes at 19 years old, and on top of that, I'm not able to drive because there's still something physically wrong with me. And I've been asking about this overdose for, like, at this time, 15 years, and still nobody will bring me to the right doctors to get it looked at. And nobody's taught me any way to even do these things. Nobody's teaching me the skills to figure out how to get the doctor or the right doctor I need. Instead, they're spending the time giving me loop-de-loop false medical information, making it even harder for me to know what needs to be done. And that's my mother mostly there. So after they get caught doing this, do they try to make it right? No. It's just like when I got abused in New Mexico, my father sued. But did he think about maybe I should go straight to getting an education? That way maybe people would know I did not get an education in New Mexico? Because think about it. If my father, because he sued New Mexico, got 20 whatever $1,000, he got his money back because I got abused, but I missed out on 18 months of education. Now, if he brought me straight to Massachusetts or straight back to Texas, right back into the school, they would know I just missed out on 18 months because they knew me before I left, and they would know me in Texas when I came back, and they would see I'm at the same level. If they brought me to Massachusetts right away, they would wonder why I'm so far behind, and the move in Texas would account for it, but they would be looking into New Mexico right away, seeing as that was my last school. But instead, my father decides to homeschool me in Maine while he buys and sells properties, confusing everybody by the time we get to Massachusetts, because now they brought me from Mass to Texas, Texas to New Mexico, New Mexico to Maine, Maine to Mass, and then they're handing all this education paperwork to a teacher in Massachusetts going, you figure it out. Of course, the teachers could not figure it out that I was missing 4 years of education. Instead, my mother started saying, it's all a mental illness, it's all a mental illness, it's all a mental illness. So instead of trying to catch me up, they cut back the lessons. Because they figured it was a mental illness, they could cut it back. But they never tried to fill in the 4 years I'm missing. And nobody ever talked to me about the school or tried to fill in New Mexico. Nobody ever talked to me about how maybe my mother's druggings or how I had an overdose off of pills. Maybe we should go to the doctors and get that looked into. Instead, my mother goes, it's an allergy attack. Well, who told my mother that that was an allergy attack? Nobody. My mother came up with that. I went blind after taking pills. I passed out while my breathing slowed down. I lost the ability to walk, talk, or feel my whole entire nervous system. And when I woke up, my body was changed for life. I started sucking on my skin. Teachers and doctors and people were commenting on it. There was physical therapy and speech therapy because of this sudden change. But of course, my mother and father were lying. They were saying I was just born with it. Like, no. The teachers knew me before. They could see, they called me in the hallway for the sudden change. Everybody knew me that this was a sudden change. But see, my mother wasn't having it. Instead, she wanted this to be something wrong with me. If this was a sudden change, then there's something that needs to be looked into with them. But if this is something that I was born with, then she could blame it on just me or the mother or somebody else. But that wasn't working, so they moved me to Texas, and they called everything attachment disorder. It's an allergy attack. While my mother gives me extra Epicac punishments, she slips me drugs I'm not prescribed. Even my own adoption. When a part of my adoption, my mother slipped me drugs, and then I couldn't even stay awake. I was almost half asleep for my own adoption party. People were giving me gifts, and I was like drooling, looking on a place on the floor to fall asleep. How fucked up is that? The happiest moment of my life, an adoption party. That should be the happiest moment of my life. And instead, I just remember looking at a place on the floor to fall asleep because I felt so drugged up. Oh my God, I was swimming wanting to sleep.